Pecuniary interest tonight? Not seeing any. I would ask that you rise if you're able for the singing of our national anthem. We would like to acknowledge the treaty lands and territory of the Williams Treaty Nations and of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We also recognize that Dufferin County is the traditional territory of the Wendat and the Haudenosaunee and is home to many Indigenous people today. Now, before we move into the statutory and non-statutory public meetings, I'm really excited to start with the Senior of the Year presentation. This year, the 2026 Senior of the Year is Wayne White. He's joined here today by his lovely wife and family, and I would like to turn it over to Councillor Andrews to say a few words about Wayne.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and good evening, everyone. It is with great admiration and respect that I announce on behalf of Orangeville Council that Wayne White is the 2026 Senior of the Year. Wayne exemplifies the very best qualities of leadership, compassion, and volunteer dedication to our community, serving as an inspiring role model for all ages. A list of his volunteer activities over the years would fill numerous pages. Given his background as a former elementary school teacher, it's no surprise the list features numerous youth and community initiatives that continue to benefit the town of Orangeville and beyond. For example, Wayne has been a Lions Club member for over 40 years, including serving as a district governor. That experience introduced him to the idea of giving, and he has done that and continues to do so. He's a prominent member and former chair of the Friends of Island Lake, where he was instrumental in the construction of the Vicky Barron Lakeside Trail and the Bob Scott Bridge. For those initiatives, Wayne has also worked on everything from preparing lumber for installation to collecting scrap metal for fundraising. Continuing the theme of volunteerism and his commitment to giving back to our community, Wayne's other volunteer list, to name a few, include the Rotary Club's Rib Fest, Make Orangeville Shine. Wayne has been a fixture over the years at various community activities as one of Orangeville's volunteer photographers, while also embracing history and events through his local story postings on social media. Wayne has also found time to volunteer with his lovely wife, Wanda, where they have developed a very close relationship with Santa and Mrs. Claus, impersonating them for several years at the Headwaters Healthcare Center's Candy Cane Fair. And in his post-retirement, Wayne has found the time to coach volleyball and embrace jogging, participating in several fundraising races. Humorously, Wayne is Orangeville's unofficial ambassador of Tim Hortons, as well as being a longtime supporter of Orangeville's first family of hockey, the Ritchie family, parents of former NHL players Nick and Brett, where Wayne proudly maintains an impressive Ritchie jersey collection. Beyond his community service, Wayne embodies kindness, generosity, and resilience. He is known for his unwavering willingness to lend a helping hand, offer guidance, and provide encouragement to make those around them feel even better. Wayne's positive attitude and genuine concern for others makes him one of the pillars of our community. Thus, on behalf of the municipality, the town of Orangeville, I'm honored, along with my fellow members of Orangeville Council, to recognize the recipient of the 2026 Orangeville Senior of the Year Award to Mr. Wayne White.
Stay there for 1 second. What's that? I know, you can't enter yet. No, you stay there for a minute. You're going to go back. You're going to go back. We got you. That's okay, I know. Before we give you a minute to speak, it is actually an Ontario Senior of the Year award. So we do have our MPP, Sylvia Jones, here as well to present the award. Sylvia, did you want to say a few words before Wayne does? So we'll just get you up to the mic first. And then we'll let Wayne speak, and then we'll go do a photo in the hallway, okay? Perfect.
We need a good team back in the day.
I did. I'm afraid to speak before Wayne now.
Absolutely.
Listen, I think, Wayne, our paths first crossed when you were Friends of Island Lake, and he was collecting garbage. Okay, it was metal garbage, but it was still garbage. But, you know, the volunteerism, the giving back that you have done through your entire career really just speaks to how special you are to our community. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you get to go up to the mic now, Wayne.
So about a couple of weeks ago, Wanda comes to me and says, the mayor wants to talk to you. So she goes back down to the pergola, and I reach out to the mayor, and she informs me I'm getting an award. So I go back to the pergola, and Wanda's there, and she says, well, what did the mayor want? Oh, she wants me to run for deputy mayor. I've won several Lions Awards, CBC Awards, but this one's very special. I was born and raised in Orangeville, attended Princess Margaret School, attended ODSS, got my very first teaching job at Parkson Centennial School. I got a former student behind me. And this award was really special. And so right away I had to text my daughter Alex and my son Nathaniel. He's in Newfoundland, so obviously he's going to be here tonight. Alex, right away, congratulations, Dad, well deserved. Nathaniel, gee, Dad, that's a funny way of telling you you're getting old. Yesterday, during Father's Day, we were reminiscing about building Bob's bridges, and we're cutting these 5-foot timbers and 6-foot timbers, and Wanda and I helped out with that project. Then when it was done, the final project was Close the Gap campaign, the West Link. And Bob Shirley, who was chairman of Friends of Island Lake at the time, he took me aside and said, Wayne, you're going to be my co-chairman. No election at a FOIL meeting, but he made me co-chairman. And with that job, we had to go to the town of Mono, Dufferin County, and Orangeville and ask, or maybe a better word is beg for money. And Rob Adams was the mayor at the time. He was behind the trail 100%. We had no trouble getting that money. And Wanda spearheaded the Buy a Footprint campaign. And this is what I want to tell the people in the audience. This wasn't just the town of Orangeville, town of Mono, Dufferin County. This was a community project. And the community got behind it. They bought those footprints. They made donations on Trail Donation Day. And every one of those boards on the West Link were screwed in by volunteers. So it was a Dufferin County community effort. And I'm so proud to be part of that. And I want to thank the town of Orangeville. A lot of the councillors may not be aware of this, but you still support the Friends of Island Lake. Bob Shirley and I, about a month ago, with this pickup truck and trailer, went to the library, and we got probably one of the heaviest loads of scrap metal we've ever collected. The next day, I wasn't feeling well, and Wanda says, you know, Wayne, you're 72, Bob's 82. You got to stop doing that. I think that lasted about a week, right? So we still collect scrap metal, and you continue to support the trail, and I want to thank you for that, and thank you for this award. It's very special. It's going up in the living room, right? Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Wayne. I'm going to call a very brief recess so that we can head out into the atrium and do some photos and present Wayne his actual award. as a mechanism to gather information. All members of the public are permitted to speak to statutory public meeting agenda items. However, only residents, taxpayers, service providers, or members speaking on behalf of an association or organization that serves the town of Orangeville are permitted to speak to non-statutory public meeting items, provided they've not spoken to that item before council in the preceding 3 months. If you would like to speak to a matter and meet the requirements that I just mentioned, please call 647-374-4685 and enter meeting ID 948-4058-5629, followed by the pound sign twice, or you can attend the meeting by clicking on the registration link included on the published agenda. If you wish to be notified of the decision of any of the matters listed on the agenda, please contact the Clerk's Division with your name, phone number, mailing address, and email address referencing the specific matter by email to clerksdepartment@orangeville.ca or by calling 519-941-0440 extension 7303. All information submitted or provided during the meeting or registration will be considered public information and will be entered into the public record. So we're going to move into the statutory matters first. The first matter on the agenda is regarding RZ 2026-02, Block 93, Plan 7M70. Staff have confirmed that notice was provided in accordance with the Planning Act for this item. I will now call upon Jim Hughes from Hughes Management and Ahmad McHale from For Architecture to provide a presentation. If we can just invite you up to the delegation stand there.
First of all, thank you, Mayor Post, members of council, and staff, and members of the public that have shown up tonight in response to our application. We do sincerely appreciate an open forum such as this to receive feedback from everybody that can feed into what I expect will be an iteration of what is in front of you tonight. So I understand that the purpose of tonight's meeting, although statutory, is to allow us to introduce our project to everyone seated here tonight and to provide a little bit of background. So Block 93 is a registered block on Plan 7M70. It is part of the existing surrounding community, and it was proved as part of the existing surrounding community. The block is only 1.23 acres in size, which is about half a hectare. And it is currently designated commercial in the official plan, and the zoning bylaw identifies it as neighborhood commercial C2. That provides for a variety of commercial uses. As part of the commercial designation in the official plan, there's also a special provision. It's in section E8.64, and what it does is it recommends that neighborhood commercial, or any commercial building for that matter, accommodate residential units above. Specifically, residential uses above any commercial building will be encouraged either at the initial development stage or as part of a future intensification opportunity. We think it's best to identify sort of the residential use together with the commercial immediately, as it serves very well with the architecture that has been prepared for this site, which we'll get to soon. So the neighborhood commercial C2 zone provides for a variety of commercial uses. There's a few that we're not recommending for this site, and we will likely request that the zoning amendment reflect that request, or should I say the prohibition of several uses, and they include any restaurant use. We believe that could be, it wouldn't serve the community very well. We're not recommending that there be cafes as well, and we are not recommending that there be convenience stores. But there is a wide variety of other commercial uses which we have seen in a development very similar to this one. The zoning provisions, of course, also provide for a lot of very site-specific requirements, such as setbacks, areas, height restrictions, et cetera. several of which the area residents have raised as a concern, which we will address later on in this presentation. So in general, the official plan objectives are intended to create a balanced community. When this block was registered, or should I say approved back in 2016, serious consideration was given for the residents' proximity to schools and parks, et cetera. I guess if Jordan can move to, I would say the slide after this one. Maybe the slide after that one. In any event, the slide that I'm asking to refer to identifies the local parks and schools, et cetera, that are in close proximity to this development. Yeah, that was the slide I was referring to. Thank you, Jordan. You can see it's close to Parkinson Crescent Park. There are a variety of schools in the area. I'm aware of another school that is going to be proposed just north of this site as well, in the fullness of time. I won't go into all the architecture. I would default that presentation to Mr. Imad Mikhail. He is the project architect, and he is partner and principal architect with For Architecture.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Same like Jim, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to have an opportunity like this to integrate the design with the neighboring comments and make sure that the design is responding to the needs of the zoning and the needs of the community in this area. May I ask you to go to the next slide, please? So what we are looking at here is the site plan. As you can see that the site is anchoring a corner between Hanson Boulevard and Parkinson Crescent. And it is as Jim mentioned, it's a mixed use zoning classification. So on the north and the east side, there is a residential usage. However, there is an intention for Hanson Boulevard to be urbanized with a mixed-use properties. So the site zoning and the configuration of the site, we are trying to do a transition between the north and the east side of residential usage to the south side where the urbanized roads will be. So this, we responded to that by block number 3, which you can see in like a beige color. This is a 3-story townhouse with no commercial. So this is facing the residential properties on the north side with a setback of 5 meters. Each one of those units have 2 parking spaces, one enclosed into a parking garage and the other one a drive aisle. However, from the east and the south, we are proposing a more like live-work product or townhouse, where there is a commercial unit facing the street, and there are 2 townhouses back-to-back on top of that. So there is an inner driveway that goes between the block 3 and block 1 and 2 that serves those garages and drive aisles. And each one of the stacked townhouses that are marked in yellow have their own garage parking space and have a drive aisle parking space. So each unit has 2 parking spaces. And then the blue units will act more to animate the public realm around the Hanson Boulevard and Parkinson Crescent to create a more livable elevation. Rather than having a side yard or a fence facing these streets, we are trying to create an animated elevation along those boulevards. In addition to the 2 parking spaces that are for each unit, there are visitors parking. We have a total of 8 spaces for visitors of the residential, and we provided additional spaces for the commercial. of 7 spaces, in addition to 10 spaces as a lay-by parking. As you can see from the site plan, we are trying to set a buffer between the residential usages on the north, east, and south side, setting the mixed-use usage away from those residential community. So may I ask you to go to the next slide, please? So you can see this in the massing, where the pink color, which is block 3, this is the residential usage, standard townhouse 3-story with garage and driveway. And then the usages facing the street is the mixed use. What we are envisioning for this product is that, as Jim mentioned, it's a limited commercial usage, more like a business offices, which might be owned by the owner of the unit on top. So it can help as main or secondary income for every family. And in the same time, we are proposing to limit the usage of the commercial to have a minimum vehicular traffic and pedestrian traffic for those commercials. So if you go to the next slide, please. As you see, we responded to that in the elevation. You see the difference in the residential fenestrations for the elevation compared to the commercial. So the ground floor are the commercial units facing in proximity to the pedestrian walkway along the Hudson Boulevard, where you can see more glass, more light entrances in and out. Compared to a fence, we believe that this will help in urbanizing these streets. On top of that, you can see the windows for the residential unit on top. We are not proposing any balconies on this for privacy, and we believe that it's not feasible for the residential usage on top. However, the unit on top will have inner balconies for the laneway, facing the laneway in the property, in the inner property. May I ask the next slide, please? We are proposing, in terms of finishes, we are proposing in the ground floor more natural finishes like stone or masonry. And then on the upper floor, this is not the exact project that we have, but it's a similar project that our office was working on. And it's exactly the same fenestrations which we are proposing for this one. It's more, we're trying to create this transition between the residential low-rise surrounding and the public realm that will be in the street. So we are proposing like stone and natural material in the ground floor. However, in the second and third floor will be more like brick, and then on top of decorative elements, the same as you see in the illustration. May I ask you to go to the next slide, please? This is a section that explains the configuration of the commercial live-work, where you see from on the left-hand side, this is the garage entering, and then from the garage you can get, either you can access the commercial unit if it's owned by the owner of the residential unit on top, or you can go direct to the residential unit, and then the upper units are back to back. So you see a living room in the second floor, and then the third floor is the bedrooms. I guess that's it for the architectural part.
All right. Thank you, Ahmed. I wanted now to respond to the slides that is in front of you now, which is the policy context. What we tried very, very hard to do, mostly because we didn't buy this block after the fact. This block was developed by us together with the residential. We're also aware of the development on the other side of Hanson, which will be a nice development. They, I believe, are approved at 6 stories. So what we're doing, which Ahmed had referred to, is we are trying to transition, between those 6-story high buildings and the low-rise residential. The townhouses that surround us are 2-story in height generally, and we are proposing 3-story in height. Within the internal block 3 that Ahmed had mentioned, that's a small footprint unit. So we are hard-pressed to make it into a 2-story unit. It has the garage really on the main floor and then a utility room. Above that would be living room and, kitchen dining area, and above that would be bedrooms. It results in a 3-story product. I will get into some of the concerns raised by residents with respect to that block in a few minutes. Responding to policy context, the policy in the official plan requires that we promote a mixed-use development, which is what we have done, and support local economic activity. So what we have done, the development includes, of course, as we have explained earlier, ground floor commercial. It's not our, how can I put it? It's not what we changed. It is the designation and the zoning in this block that has been approved as part of the subdivision. It's been in place for a long time. And the upper floors, of course, are residential in accordance with the official plan recommendations. Policy context also requires enhancing the community livability. So what this project is intended to do is bring the commercial element close to the street, close to the sidewalk. We're not looking for a commercial building inset into the development, separated from the sidewalk with parking spaces. We've seen this project built already. I've been there, and it is quite successful. And it is quite livable, and it brings people out. It brings people out to visit those communities or visit those businesses from the community. The other policy concept ensures compatibility with the surroundings. Although we think we've made our best effort to provide a product that ensures compatibility, given that it transitions from a higher density down to a lower density, we think that we have accomplished that compatibility requirement. Again, with Block 3 being 3 stories against 2-story townhouses, there's an argument to be made that, that maybe we haven't gone far enough. But I've explained the constraints on the site that prohibit going a little further than we have. And that brings us, of course, to compatibility with surrounding residential, which we think that we have done, given the nature of what we're supposed to build here, which is a mixed-use commercial project. We're also supposed to support local economic and community benefits, which we believe the commercial aspect of this project accomplishes. Next slide, please. The OP also imposes design guidelines, which we take quite seriously. The ownership of this project was quite adamant about developing a site with superior architectural qualities. Again, part and parcel because this block was designed with the original subdivision. People living in the subdivision essentially, they purchased from Cachet Homes, it's just the builder, but they also purchased from us too. So we feel we have a responsibility to the community. So architectural, or should I say the design guidelines include architectural design and form, pedestrian connectivity and streetscape, landscaping and green spaces, and parking and access. I won't go into too much detail on the architectural. Mr. McHale has addressed the architectural benefits of the site. Another component of the design guidelines that I wanted to point out is that on a very small site, being 1.23 acres, we have managed to incorporate almost 25% affordable housing. Now, the affordable housing is characterized as a standalone unit with outside parking. This allows us to reduce the price of these units to what would be considered, an affordable type unit, giving provincial guidelines. We have also tried extremely hard to create a sense of place. We don't want this plaza to look like, other commercial type plazas throughout town. We want this plaza to be unique, and we want people to appreciate where they are when they drive by. They'll know where they are. That brings me to parking. Parking is always difficult. especially with commercial and mixed-use products. We did fashion this development off of a similar development located in the city of Markham. It is not central Markham. It is on the very east limit of Markham, and it is located within its own isolated enclave. And it's an enclave that resembles very closely the Veterans Way South community as far as scale is concerned. The development in Markham contains far more of these units than we have. They had a larger area to accommodate them. And they are introduced into a development which is predominantly single detached. When reviewing that development, we also acquired the zoning bylaw for it. And the zoning bylaw for that particular project is 2 parking spaces per residential unit, period, together with lay-by parking spaces along the front. I've reviewed the site and the lay-by parking spaces, and there are less than 1 lay-by parking space per unit. What we are doing is proposing 10 lay-by parking spaces. Some of them are on Hanson, and some of them are on Parkinson. I've had preliminary discussions with staff, and they're leading me to believe that they would support the lay-by parking spaces on Parkinson. I don't want to put words in their mouth. They had some concerns with the lay-by parking spaces on Hanson, given that Hanson will have a bike lane. We commissioned Lee Consulting, who is a Toronto-based transportation consultant, to look at what we were proposing, and they recommended a 1.5 meter buffer between the bike lane and the lay-by parking spaces, which is achievable on this site along Hanson. So we are still proposing those lay-by spaces. We think those lay-by spaces are very critical to the function of these types of commercial units. Likewise, in Markham, I've been at that site and I've watched cars come into the lay-by spaces, they park, they go into the business, they get back in and they go. I have never gone to that site and found all the lay-by spaces taken. There are always spaces to be had. So I'm hoping that that would be the case here if the lay-by spaces are approved. So our proposed zoning contemplates a little bit better than what the Markham bylaw provided for. Let's see if I can find it. If you can go to the next slide, please. So again, towards the bottom of this slide, our draft zoning bylaw amendment requires a minimum of 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit. Again, the Block 3 standalone residential units, I don't have any problem complying with that. There is 1 commercial unit attached, and it will be deeded to one of the residential units, most likely the residential unit that is above it, which means that the resident who lives in that unit will also be operating that commercial space. So one of those parking spaces is already accounted for, together with the second parking space in that residential unit, which could be for commercial purposes as well. We are also requiring, within the outdoor parking spaces, 1 parking space per affordable dwelling unit. We're looking at the minimum number of parking spaces required per commercial unit to be 1, which we've accommodated. The minimum number of parking spaces required for visitors to be 7, which is 25%. And the minimum number of parking spaces required for accessible use, 4. And then, of course, the lay-by parking spaces, which we're proposing on Hanson and Parkinson, would contribute to those required commercial spaces. Next slide, please. So when you do the calculation that I just suggested, the total required parking spaces per our zoning request would be 72, and we are providing 76 on the site. Those 76, of course, include the lay-by spaces. Next slide, please. Now, we are also aware of, I guess, there was a Ontario Land Tribunal hearing back in 2024 for a site over on Broadway. I'm not sure, I think it's 780 Broadway. And they were approved for parking spaces of 1 space per 1 and 2 bedroom unit, 2 spaces for a 3-bedroom unit. Most of our units are 1 or 2 bedroom, and only Block 3 have the 3-bedroom units. So, in the event we need to adjust our zoning bylaw request to accommodate other concerns, we could in fact adopt the parking standards for that site. And what it turns into is for the residential alone, we would require 35 spaces and we would be providing 47. Some of those spaces, however, would spill over into the commercial, but as far as commercial parking is concerned, if we were to apply 1 space per 20 square meters of commercial space, we'd need 38 spaces. If you add up all the visitor, if you allow the commercial to share the residential visitor and accessibility parking and lay-by parking, et cetera, we would be providing in excess of what is required. There's a lot of ways to interpret this, but we would like an opportunity to work with staff a little bit on it. I've also been made aware that Newmarket and I think Richmond Hill have done studies on this type of a product, which is sort of a strict mixed-use type of product. And they are, I believe, recommending 1 space per 31 square meters. So that would reduce our requirement of 38 down to 25. So we think that there is opportunity to look at this site a little bit creatively with respect to parking. The other component of our application are a variety of zoning bylaw amendments as they relate to height and setbacks. The height and setback requirements for this site reflect a typical C2 commercial zone with a plaza, and we're not building that. We are building something more similar to a residential development and a mixed-use development, which requires amendments to the zoning. There are a few changes that we have made, and we have read responses from the area residents that are quite concerned with some of those, and we are willing to go back, look at our project, and try to fix them. I can go over each of the concerns. I believe the town received 4 letters. Mayor Post, if you'd like me to go over those concerns, I can. All right. The first resident, I won't use any names. I don't think that's necessary. Lives on Porter Drive. So that is the street behind our development. And they have townhouses, 2-story townhouses that back onto our 3-story product. So their concern is, of course, increased traffic, which is expected. And of course, parking overflow. They're worried about construction noise and disruption. It's something that the residents of that community will have to endure regardless of what is built. I can, however, say that the access to this development is very close to Hanson. So the inconvenience to the majority of these residents will be minor. That resident is also concerned with the increased density, that they do not feel fit the existing neighborhood. They're concerned with the impact on property values, loss of privacy again, mostly as a result of the 3-story townhouses backing onto 2. And they object to the zoning to allow commercial. But of course, the zoning requires commercial. So there's not much we can do about that. The second letter was from a resident on Parkinson Crescent, which is across from our development, so located directly across. That resident, again, prefers residential over commercial. They are wondering if the commercial is deeded with the residential, and I confirm that that is our intention, that the commercial would be deeded to one of the residential spaces, most likely the residential space directly above that commercial unit. They're concerned that once these commercial spaces are constructed, that the residents will convert them into something residential. That will be, well, impossible to do legally. The commercial units don't include kitchens or bedrooms. They don't include any of the sort of standard facilities that you would need to have a residential unit. And I don't think that any approvals would be given should they apply to do something like that. These units are strictly intended to be commercial. There is areas above the glazing for signs, tasteful signs. They're not conducive to a residential conversion, simply put. That person is also concerned about poor design and vacancies within those commercial units. I went to the Markham site. I think among probably about 32 of those units, 2 of them were vacant. And I'm not sure if they were vacant because the owner was repurposing for a different business. I'm not sure. But they all seemed to be operating well, and they were vibrant businesses. I can go over the list of all those businesses if you wish, but I won't do that unless I'm asked. And that resident number 2, is also opposed to the mixed use. Resident number 3, who also lives on Porter Drive, was concerned about the reduced setbacks along the north and east boundaries. And those setbacks are reduced relative to what you would expect in a residential development. So we are going to go back and look carefully at those. That resident was concerned with exhaust fumes and headlight glare. Exhaust fumes will be encountered anywhere. Headlight glare, the entire site right now is proposed to have a 1.8 meter high privacy screen around the entire perimeter, well, not the entire perimeter, but anywhere the site interfaces with existing residents. Excuse me. They were concerned about parking against fences and have requested a landscape buffer strip. So again, that's something that, we will look at. We will look at how feasible it is and see what it is we can do. They were also worried about the 3 stories in Block 3 as it being a privacy issue. And that resident also noted that at the top floor of the 3-story units, there's a balcony. And they were asking that those balconies be removed to help ensure their privacy. They don't want somebody up on a balcony looking straight down into their backyard, and I can sympathize with that. Windows, on the other hand, on those units are difficult to close off. I mean, bedrooms need windows. There's not much that we can do about that. Resident number 4, again, worried about privacy as a result of the Block 3 residences. They're worried about headlight glare. Again, that shouldn't be an issue with the 1.8 meter screen fence. Again, they have requested that the balconies in Block 3 be removed. Continuous landscaping along all of Block 3, which is possible, and a 1.8 meter fence along the shared property boundary, which is already proposed. I should go back. There was one resident who asked if the town would approve a fence higher than 1.8 meters. Perhaps 2.2, and that's something that we could go over with staff. So in summary, we are very happy to continue working on this proposal with staff, council, and of course the residents. We're happy to receive input, and we're happy to meet with residents, to see if what it is we can do would suit what they're looking for. Thank you. For the time being, I would like to leave myself and Mr. McHale available for questions.
Thank you very much. We are going to move into public comment, so I'll need the delegation desk, so I will have you move back to your seats for now, but we'll definitely call on you if we need you at this point. I can confirm we did not receive any delegation requests for this matter, so we will move straight into verbal comments. Were there any members of the public who have phoned in or who are online who may have questions? No? Okay, so then we will just move to in-person comments. Is there any members of the public present who wish to speak to this item? A reminder that you do get 3 minutes to present your information and that this commenting period is open to all persons in accordance with the Planning Act. Was there anybody in the gallery who wished to? Yeah, come on up. And we'll just need your name and address for the record, and you've got your 3 minutes.
Robbie Mayer, 61 Drew Brown Boulevard. I came here to throw my support along with this development, probably a little different than most people coming. I've lived in the subdivision since it was built, and I've, some of the more, the one across on Hanson, I was a little bit against that because of the density. It was 6 stories or something like that. But this one I thought was, I applaud them on their creativity, and they were, like, you can tell that they cared about separating from the residents. But I've been really looking forward for some walkability. My only thing that you guys threw me for a loop was the cafe thing. I was pretty stoked to have a cafe in the neighborhood, so I hope they reconsider that component, because I think, like, even that corner property, the corner portion, the commercial, if they had like a little cafe with a patio, like that would be pretty awesome for the community, and, walkability, maybe like an ice cream shop or something where you could walk with the kids and that kind of stuff. But I really, really like the proposal, and I think the live-work units are really cool. Like, that's something we don't really have in town, and I'm curious to see how that would play out. So I just wanted to throw my support behind the project.
Perfect. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate you being here. Was there anybody else in the gallery who wished to make a comment on this item? Sure, come on up. We'll get the mic on for you, and we do need your name and address for the record, and then we'll give you your 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm Mike. I'm Mike Simon. I'm 5 Fitzgerald Street. So I'm in the Devonley development that has been in this neighborhood for a little bit longer than Mr. Mayor's development. But and when we moved in 11 years ago, we were told there would be commercial space provided. So we understand that. I guess in hearing from my neighbors, the question is the density, and because it is a relatively small area, but the understanding and listening to the presentation here, I see that there is a bit of care being done on that. So we appreciate that, and the willingness to work with people in the neighborhood, because the existing neighborhood has been crying out for a long time. And I appeared here along with Mr. Mayor back in 2020 when we were discussing the other development proposal. And so we've been crying out for some attention for some time. So the opportunity to work with people and to make a development that is going to work for everybody in the neighborhood, those that will be coming and those that are existing in the neighborhood. So just to, I guess, to echo to some degree Mr. Mayor's comments, that willing to see something positive happen on this piece of property, because it's been a while coming.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your comments. At the back of the room, yeah, come on up. We'll get your name and address, and then you'll be ready to go.
My name's Crystal Rosa, and I live at 32 Porter Drive. One of my concerns when I received this notification, the density, there's a lot happening on a very small piece of property here. And I thank you for explaining a bit about it, because it made no sense to me. My concern, and I know I watch this field, I see this field every day. I walk out my backyard, it's right there. When I purchased my home, it was owned commercial, and I thought it was a strip mall with a coffee shop and all the fun stuff and a convenience store, and I was excited about that. And one of the things that I've done since I've lived in this property, which has been 3 years, is I've watched the sun move. One of the things I do is I started gardening, and where my fence is, there were garden beds, but there was no sun. So I actually last year spent a fortune to implode my backyard so that the part where I get full sun, I can have, and I can grow my vegetables, which I'm excited about. My concern was how tall these buildings are, because I'm really concerned that specifically my backyard's gonna be shaded, and I'm gonna have spent all that money for nothing, right? I had plans for my backyard, and it was zoned commercial, and I'm fine with that. But the building up, that concerns me. That concerns me. I have seen the property on Broadway. I actually looked into purchasing that, where it was commercial on the bottom and built up, and that is quite tall. It's very tall. And I can see that where I live and the backyards that this will face will be, the sun that nicely surrounds it, and I get full sun, will be impacted. So that's my concern.
Thank you very much for being here today. Thank you. Sir, do you want to come on up? Yep. And we'll just take your name and address for the record, and then your 3 minutes will start.
Pete Ford, 42 Porter. Parking's going to be an issue. It always is. If you go drive through Porter Drive now, at night, they're all over the road. So we're going to get people that live there, parking on Porter and walking around. That's one issue. My backyard backs onto Block 1. My backyard is 25 feet. The next building, Block 1, is 5 feet from the fence line. So from my house to the building, which is 32 feet, is 30 feet. So I'm kind of living in a bit of a shell there. And as the woman spoke, am I going to get any sun at all now? It's just 3 stories right there, 5 feet from the fence line. It's just a little tight. If it was 2 feet, is there balconies there? Because it's residential. I don't know that. Just too tight for me. Or if it's 2-story, or it's hard to tell. That's my only concern. Otherwise, I think it's a good layout. It should work.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Was there anybody else in the gallery who wished to make a comment on this item? Okay, not seeing any. I do want to acknowledge that we did receive written correspondence submitted by Yash Patel, Danny Santilli, Bruno Machado, and Kathleen DeCastro, which are included on the agenda and are forming part of the public record. We did receive additional comments after the publication of our agenda from Daniel and Sophie Bezotis and Matthew Mayer, which will be added post-agenda, so everybody can read those after. Now, was there any questions or comments from members of council on this one? Councillor Andrews, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to take a moment just to thank not only our presenters, but I also like to thank the general public who not only joined, be that through correspondence, but also those that are in the gallery this evening. Your candidness and your points of view are certainly well taken, and I will actually make reference to that in just a moment. I do have a few questions, so I guess our presenters, they're going to have to be at the table so that they can answer any of our questions they may have.
Just before you start, Councillor Andrews, just let council know we're not using the queue, so you can just raise your hand. Apologies, I should have said that ahead of time.
Thank you. So Mr. Hughes and Mr. Kale, again, thank you for your presentation. What I was really enamored by was not only the information that you provided, but also the candidness that you provided on willingness to listen to the residents and working not only in unison with the municipality, but also listening wholeheartedly to maybe some of their concerns. Your reference to some of the other examples were certainly intriguing. I'm actually familiar somewhat to the Markham location, but probably more familiar to an area that is developed in North Brampton on Mississauga Road. I guess would be the Highway 7 area. Very similar in design and the impact of mixed use, which has been kind of an important piece in discussion for development. You're speaking to somewhat the converted, because one of my roles on council and my colleague to my left here, we were a part of the Affordable Housing Task Force. And one of the things that was really important for us is to take a look at the term affordability or attainable. And I was intrigued to see, as part of your presentation, some affordable units that you are identifying. And you do have in your presentation 7 units would be identified as being affordable, whatever that definition is in 2026, 2027, and 2028. Having said that, I do want to dive into a couple of things, and one of which is I actually sat on Porter. I drive through the area, not to say on a regular basis, but my ears perk up not only when things like this happen. I do have some colleagues of mine that live in the neighborhood as well. So I sat there looking, And I was referencing to, some of the residents that are in Porter, and I was trying to imagine, and so I'm going to kind of step back a little bit. When the residents, in fact, purchase, they have this green space, and this green space has been in existence for some time, and you get used to that green space that is on the other side of the fence. And they do know that at some point there's going to be some development, whatever that's defined as being. But when you talk about the density in one perspective, which is, I call it the footprint this way, the horizontal footprint, but the vertical footprint is a little bit different. And one thing that was in your presentation that I did not see was in fact a vertical representation from that side of the fence. And not to say that that's an obligation, but I did speak with staff, and staff were very, very kind in providing me with some information that was helpful. But it was on that east side looking west, northwest, on what the density would be. So my question is that I think it was referenced on how high the three-story, the block 3 could be. Just for the sake of answering, and I do have a couple of other questions here, but how high would that be from ground zero, ground level, in comparison to the topography of the other properties that would be on the east side of that fence?
Do you want to take that, or do you want me to?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
So from our side, we try to put the commercial facing the street because the ground floor of the commercial always require taller height compared to the residential. So the clear height for the ground floor of the commercial would be 12 feet as a typical.
Meters.
Okay.
12,
Meters.
no, I'm talking about the ground floor,
Oh, I'm sorry.
ground floor height. But for every residential, we aim for 9 feet,
Okay.
plus 1 foot for the floor. So
Understood.
basically 10 feet each.
Okay, so you're talking 30 feet approximately?
Yes.
Okay. The next question I have is, in fact, I really zeroing on the mixed use and the work-at-home philosophy. I think that when we take a look at how society has changed, there are many people in our community who are, in fact, considering that or do have an option, not saying that everyone does. But if you're going to be an entrepreneur, the commercialization that exists within the properties itself is intriguing. I know that there was a commentary about the idea of, a deed that would enforce the individual to specify within reason or, an umbrella type of business. The idea of a cafe in that neighborhood, I know I kind of call it the long-lost northwest part of our neighborhood because there is a disconnect that hopefully will be changing very soon, but we really don't have that kind of ambience. And so I like what was referenced was a kind of a neighborhood within a community or a community within a neighborhood that I think was highlighted. So where I'm going with this is, will there be restrictions on the type of commercial businesses? You referenced it, but I'm just wanting to get kind of your take on that again.
I had prepared a list of the businesses that occupy the markup site. And I had provided them to Mr. McHale, who responded that the businesses that I suggested be dropped from the permissions should be dropped because they constitute, I think, what you call it, an occupancy type. It's a different part of the building code.
Yeah.
It would solicit higher rates of traffic, and we thought, in respect to the existing community, that it might work out better if those uses weren't included. On the other hand, we do have a couple of units that would be very conducive to a cafe, but I think that's something that we can discuss in more detail. I personally thought it would be a great idea. But then the other side of that coin is, does it generate more traffic? What are the downsides to having something like that?
So I'll just add to this. In terms of the usages of the commercial, what we're trying to do as per the building code, we're trying to avoid the assembly. It triggers some fire separation that will complicate the design. In the same time, the usages that require daily loading and waste collection, which will require trucks to enter this area. Mm-hmm. So this is the challenge that we have with the size of the property. And I would like just to touch base on the affordability because that's what you started talking about. Like we care a lot about the affordability, and we understand that there is a specific definition for affordable unit, which is theoretical. And we are trying to abide to it in those units that we are proposing. But in addition, we believe that practically, the affordability can be achieved by an efficient layout, where we can provide a unit that is providing the needs, not oversized design. In the same time, if the unit has a secondary income for the family, like the commercial use, or for some units at the end of every block, we are proposing maybe they will have a secondary basement unit that can be rented out. So these can be addressing the affordability, but indirectly. So it will, it become affordable because of the fact that it has a secondary income. So this is what we are trying to do, and we don't want to overwhelm the property considering the size of it. We didn't start by a 6-story proposal because we know it's not suitable for this. We are trying to stay reasonable to things that can be built.
Understood. I do have one more question, Your Worship. Sorry, go ahead.
A little more, not every one of the affordable units has a companion commercial unit. But affordability, I believe the latest definition would be the carrying cost of the unit would equal 30% of the family income. And I think the 2021 census identified Orangeville as about $121,000 in gross family income. So 30% of that gives you a rent of about $3,000 a month, or, if you have enough of a down payment, you would be able to spend about $500,000 on a unit and be able to carry it for $3,000 a month, which complies with that affordable requirement.
So you are implying that these would be, quote, a condominium-style type of property, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. My last question at this point, Your Worship, is pertaining to the setback, and a resident did reference that as well. I did notice, and again, I was trying to go through the information the council has received, and of course, no matter how much I increase the size, I still can get the minuscule distance between the property line and say the Block 3 as an example. How many meters are we talking about? Was it 4 meters? 4.8. Okay, almost 5 meters. So, okay. So that gives me at least some understanding. But again, you also highlighted the height of the fence as a possibility, with the example that you identified as a 2.2 as a possible landing point, but 1.8 being where it starts at this point. You've answered the questions I have. I know other members of council have others, and I may circle back at some point. But thank you for your responses.
Thank you. Councillor Prendergast, then Councillor Stevens, then Councillor Sherwood.
Thank you, Mayor Post, through you. I have 3 comments or questions. The first is in reference to the commercial space. At first, I was excited, similar to the comment from Mr. Mayor, about the walkability. I pictured kids riding their bikes to the corner store. I don't know if you're familiar with Southfields. There's a successful scone shop that a lot of people go to. It's a destination. And I just kind of see that as a third space for the community that does lack those spaces. That would impact parking, I assume, and if it's a restaurant, perhaps it would need other kind of zoning. So I do understand that with the truck traffic, et cetera. But if we're doing what's truly best for the neighborhood and trying to build community, it's not putting a lawyer's office there. It's building community by drawing people in. Is just kind of what I was thinking. And you did mention creating economic benefit and supporting local activity, reducing commutes. But if they're mostly white-collar offices, you're not really reducing anyone's commute, because these are places people would go like a one-off, right? So it's just one kind of idea I had. Things like a daycare would be beneficial there, not really like a tax office. But that's just what I was thinking as a parent, community member in that sense. My next comment is about Block 3. It has no commercial unit in it. So I'm thinking, what does the town really need? Seniors housing. We need low-rise or mid-rise seniors housing. That would address the issue of the height, and it would address the issue of many people that want to downsize in this town. Ideas like maybe 1.5 stories, 2 stories, a back split, not a lot of stairs. It would reduce the parking and maybe allow for more commercial ideas to explore. And that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Prendergast. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Your Worship. You probably don't realize or know, but I chair Orangeville Access, so I'm the accessibility Chairman, and my questions are going to be around that. So the first one, how many resident units are going to be accessible?
So as per the code, these are identified as houses. So currently, we are not proposing for accessible units as per the code requirement. But the accessible parking is done for the visitors and the commercial use.
Okay, so if I can continue. The accessible parking, so you have two just inside the entranceway to the units. This came to Ms. Pottle brought it to our Access Orangeville Committee 2 weeks ago, and I know one of the concerns from the committee was where the accessibility parking spots are located. So the first two, if they wanted to go to the business, they have to walk across the driveway, get up the sidewalk and into the businesses. So first off, what's the grade like? We couldn't find that on the,
Through you,
Plans.
Mayor Post. The grade is on the site relatively flat. So there aren't excessive grades that would prohibit accessibility, to my knowledge. There is a grading plan, and we can make that available to you if you'd like.
Thank
And
you.
as far as the accessibility, the location of those spaces, we're open to put them wherever they make the most sense.
Okay, closer would be ideal, especially to the businesses. The next one would be the affordability dwelling. I don't think one parking spot in this day and age is going to be beneficial. Most people have two cars because two people have to work in order to afford to live in this area. So that's just my comment. And you kept referring to having maybe the business owner live above the business. How can you make that possible? I mean, it's a great suggestion, but I mean, it's just a suggestion. And then you just mentioned the single dwelling unit could possibly rent out the basement level or another level. I would not be in favor of that. If it's a single dwelling, it should be that, because again, you're going to cause parking issues in the whole neighborhood. So that's it for my comments for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Sherwood.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. I have a couple of comments. First, I noticed that the entrance is off of Parkinson, and I was just a little curious. I visualized between, now that the access is going into Parkinson, there'll be quite a bit of more traffic between Hanson and Drew Brown. So I wondered why didn't you get entrance and exit on Hanson rather than on Parkinson in that little area? Then I also have another comment that may go to staff, but I'm also a little concerned about 6 laybys being on Hanson. Hanson is going to be a busy road when it's open there. And 6 on there and with the bike lane, I don't know if that's a good idea, but I wondered if our transportation division had any comment about that. And I think that's pretty much it. So you can
Do you want to go ahead
talk
first?
to me
Yeah, go
about
ahead.
Through you, Mayor Post. The access on Parkinson was chosen because I've developed in Orangeville for about 30 years, and I'm quite familiar with Hanson, and Hanson has always been considered a limited access road. I was looking at the project on the other side of Hanson as well and noted that their dedicated residential building also doesn't have an access on Hanson, which I thought was unusual. They are forced to drive all the way through the project just to get in and out. So we put our access on Parkinson because I simply presumed that Public Works Transportation would reject to an access on Hanson. With respect to the lay-by parking, there was concern with the engineering, Public Works Department about those spaces. I mentioned that we had Lee Consulting take a look at that. They recommended a buffer of 1.5 meters between the lay-by parking spaces and the bike lane. And there was also a suggestion that the lay-by parking spaces that we're proposing on this side of Hanson could be mirrored on the other side of Hanson for the project that is being proposed by Cache there. And as part of that, perhaps the speed limit along Hanson could be reduced in that general vicinity to, alleviate any safety concerns.
Councillor Sherwood?
Before I ask our transportation manager, so I'm kind of visualizing this a bit like Blind Line. You may not be familiar with that part of town, but on Blind Line there are laybys on the west side, and which is okay because they kind of fit in with that area. I'm more worried about the busyness of Hanson, people stopping there. I just don't know if it's good to have stop traffic on Hanson. I don't think there's ever been any parking allowed on either side, and I'm going to ask our manager to correct me on that. Or
CAO Smith, yeah.
Yeah, actually, I think what we'd prefer, if it's okay with you, is we'll take the question back in our recommendation report when it comes. We itemize all the questions we've received, and we give good, fulsome answers to them. So we will document your question and include it in the report.
Was there any other questions or comments? Councillor Andrews?
I wanted to make sure that we didn't have anybody else on council that had any questions. Okay, thank you, Your Worship. This is just a follow-up to, again, a comment that was made from the gallery. In previous presentations we've had at other public meetings, I've asked about sunshade studies. And this is one based on the impact of density. And in this particular case, I'm zeroing in on Block 3. And it's because of the fact of, the proximity to the setback and also the closeness of those homes that are on Porter specifically. Is that something that you traditionally have provided, or is that something that I guess the municipality in this particular form can, through staff, potentially request?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, as soon as, if you can give us the terms of reference, which day of the year require the
Well, I think when we talk about typically when people are outside, so this would be spring, summer, and fall.
We do those studies all the time, and
Okay.
we can provide it as soon as we receive those terms of references by the time set through the year. We can provide a massing with the shadow map through the year, so it can address all these concerns to see the exact shadow map.
Great.
And how it relates, and we will do the grading in effect as well with the fence and everything. So we'll model everything in 3D and run the sun shadow, and it will be a computerized shadow map.
Thank you. I have one more question and a final comment. Garbage pickup. Again, we talk about I was looking at the visual and again, zeroing in as much as I could, end up making it bigger on my computer screens. I still was trying to figure out, okay, do we have our circular material, garbage trucks going in, or will there be other garbage bins located within the proximity of the commercial side? How do you visualize that?
So what we are proposing for this development is a MULOC system, which is underground, and occasionally a truck will come and remove those from the underground and replace them on occasional basis. It's not even weekly. So everything is underground. The only thing that you see on top are the openings for those throw-in bins, and it's underground. That is illustrated on the site plan beside the barrier-free parking. So you see 3 different MULOC systems for the different waste segregations.
Okay, great, thank you. You've been eloquent in providing the answers that I've been looking for. And just a commentary, one of my files again has been economic development. You referenced economic benefit. We also want to thank you for considering and investing in our community too as well. This is a very important part of growth in our community. And whenever we have developers and those that are looking at investing in our community, I want to thank them publicly. And again, on behalf of those of us that are sitting here, I think it's very, very important to hear that.
Thanks, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Sherwood?
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. Just one more comment. I'm hoping you reconsider a convenience store. I look at a convenience store as being something that you know that the people are not going to be parked there for hours. It's quick in and out. I think of children in the area maybe wanting to go on their bikes and go grab a bag of chips or a popsicle or something. And I also think of convenience, like say I just ran out of milk and I just want to run down. So I think having a Circle K or something there so children can go get a slushie or a Slurpee or whatever they call it there. But anyhow, if you could just reconsider convenience. I look at a convenience store as being maybe 10 minutes tops that someone's going to come in and out.
Thanks, Councillor Sherwood. Anybody else? Councillor Prendergast, go ahead.
I think I'm just going to reiterate, Block 3 does not have commercial and it's zoned commercial. So I think that the intended purpose of Block 3 should really be tailored to the community. And it should be something that we really need. Seniors housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prendergast. Councillor Stevens.
I'm sorry. If Zone 3 does go maybe to some senior living, please consider an elevator. And that's my request. Thank you.
Okay, so I just had one. I think most of my council colleagues have covered all of my questions. I just had one more. I was so pleased to see that there was consideration for affordable units. And I know around this council table, we've talked about how we could potentially look at parking reductions in order to do a trade-off for affordable units. And I think that's great. My question with that, though, is what is the plan to make sure that those units are kept affordable in perpetuity? Because we know that you can sell them once at an affordable price, but that reduction in parking is forever. So when that person is ready to move out of that unit, is there a plan that you've thought of or that you've used with other developments that you've done in order to keep those units affordable in perpetuity? Sorry to put you on the spot with that one.
I don't know that there is a legal framework that would allow me to place restrictions on a unit to ensure that they remain affordable. What we've done, however, is scale the unit to be small enough so that relative to the balance of the units in the subdivision, these units would be priceless. I don't know that there is. I will ask. I've never asked the question before if there's something that I can do that would ensure affordability in perpetuity. I'll ask the question, but I'm right now somewhat convinced that there isn't, but I could be wrong.
I know that one option could be that you could make them rentals. There's some also grants available through the federal government to have them as rentals, and then you could control that they would be affordable in perpetuity. I know that this was more of a for sale is what you were looking for, but just as a comment, because that's what my one concern is when it comes to us looking at parking reductions, is that we know that that's great for once, but if it's going to turn over regularly, we want to make sure that those will be affordable in perpetuity. If there's no further questions or comments from Council, I would like to thank you guys for your presentation today. It's a very thoughtfully laid out presentation, and I really appreciate the way that you've taken the public feedback so sincerely, and we look forward to what the recommendations from staff are when they come back. So with that, is there a motion then to receive the report? Councillor Andrews and Councillor Prendergast, any last questions or comments? All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you both very much for being here. Next, we'll move into the non-statutory portion of the public meeting. The next matter on the agenda is regarding the proposed Orangeville bylaw amendment regarding pollinators. I will now call upon Catherine, Senior Climate and Sustainability Specialist, to provide an overview of the proposed Orangeville bylaw amendments. Catherine, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Post, members of council. Thank you for having me today. What I will be presenting today is some changes and amendments to 3 bylaws to support our pollinator protection plan and Bee City commitments. Next slide, please. This slide just discusses some of the highlights the 3 bylaws that I will be recommending we amend, again, to support pollinator-friendly practices, pollinator protection, and tick-aware maintenance. Next slide, please. Why are we amending these bylaws? It is to align town bylaws with the pollinator protection plan, with the pollinator protection plan and to align with our bee city commitments. This will also allow us for intentional habitat plantings while preserving enforceable maintenance rules. Next slide, please. I want to add that the intention of the proposed changes is to introduce more inclusive and enabling language within the town's bylaws so that pollinator-friendly practices are clearly recognized and supported while still maintaining appropriate standards for safety, visibility, maintenance, and public health. The goal is to remove unintended barriers to compliant pollinator gardens and similar planting practices, and to better align the town's bylaws and our pollinator protection plan, which was received by council in July of 2025. Next slide, please. I want to make a note that since this presentation was published, we have made some minor changes in wording refinements to remove duplications and improve clarity. Those updates will be reflected in the final report to council. As you may be aware, these bylaws are in draft form, so there likely will be changes. And the major changes and overall direction I'm outlining today will remain the same. One of the first changes that I'm proposing to the 3 bylaws that I addressed earlier, which are the clean yard standards, property standards, and boulevard maintenance bylaws, is to add a definition for the term pollinator garden, which is reflected up in the screen above. Just to save on time, I will not read through the definition. I'll just ask to go to the next slide. An additional definition that is being added to all 3 bylaws is the definition of invasive species, just to clearly identify what that means and how to understand what an invasive species is within the actual town itself. I will also be adding to all 3 bylaws the definition of ornamental grass and the definition of turf grass, which was not included in this presentation, but it will be included in the final report. Next slide, please. All the changes here specifically outlined in the Clean Yards bylaw are reflected in red. I would like to note the only change that is actually being made is the proposed change from the allowance of having 6 inches of height for grass, going from 6 inches, to 8 inches. Municipalities like the city of Guelph, city of Toronto, and the town of Caledon all have the similar grass height restriction of around 20 centimeters or 8 inches. The section that says except where vegetation forms part of that is being removed, so please disregard that. Next slide, please. This section, continuing in the Clean Yards bylaw, clearly defines the exemptions of pollinator gardens and speaks on habitat restoration, ecological enhancement plantings, land designated by the town or managed for ecological restoration. Again, I won't go into the specific details, but if there's any questions, I'll leave it to the end. Next slide, please. This slide, still in the Clean Yards bylaw, clearly specifies what a pollinator garden is, and to make sure that safety, visibility, accessibility, and pest management are still considered when pollinator gardens are being installed on private property. Next slide, please. Still continuing in the Clean Yards bylaw, you'll note that some of the words and verbiage is repetitive through each bylaw. So again, I won't go into each specific verbiage. I just want to highlight some of the changes. And in this section over here, I'm a little bit nervous. I'm adding that we consider health, safety, and nuisance concerns under this bylaw be controlled and still when installing the pollinator garden. Next slide, please. Now we're moving into the boulevard maintenance changes. Again, the only change that I will be recommending here is the increase from 6 inches to 8 inches. The section that speaks on except where such vegetation forms, I will be removing that, so please disregard that. Next slide, please. This section proposes changes to adding on the boulevard the allowance of a pollinator garden without the obstruction of drainage, snow storage, winter maintenance operations, utility access, and/or municipal operations. Next slide, please. We're continuing the boulevard maintenance bylaw. This is where I'm clearly stating, again, pollinator garden be accepted within the boulevard maintenance bylaw. Sorry, next slide, please. Again, this is similar verbiage that you'll see in the other bylaws. This section clearly defines what how a pollinator garden is deemed compliant in regards to specific provincial acts and specific allowances so that it doesn't interfere with plows, snow clearing, utility works, and it doesn't encourage items like harboring refuse, dumping, and promoting rodents. Next slide, please. I won't go into, I won't read this, but I outline additional exemptions for pollinator gardens within the boulevard maintenance bylaw, highlighting public health, safety, and accessibility. Next slide, please. And finally, the last section for boulevard maintenance is adding the addition of a pollinator garden as an exception for boulevards within the town of Orangeville. Next slide, please. I think this might be a duplicate. Yeah, this might be a duplicate, so next slide, please. And now we're going to the property standards. Again, a little bit of repetition here. I am suggesting the grass exceedance go from 6 inches to 8 inches. As mentioned, 3 other municipalities have a similar type of allowance as well. Next slide, please. I'm proposing that under the property standards bylaw, we allow for pollinator gardens, not have that specific restriction for vegetation, not including grasses though. Next slide, please. This section, again, in the in the property standards bylaw, defines the allowances or the specifications that a pollinator garden must have in order to be compliant with this specific bylaw. A lot of this verbiage, again, is repetitive in all the other 2 bylaws. Next slide, please. Similar verbiage, again, you might have seen in the in the boulevard maintenance bylaw, which is that this bylaw shall adhere to a certain height and shall not be deemed overgrown and unsightly for the reasons of vegetation height, seasonal flowering, and et cetera. Next slide, please. Here I outline some of the allowances for specifically the property standards bylaw when it comes to turf grass and planting pollinator gardens. Yeah, that's it. Next slide, please. And this is the last document that I wanted to highlight. This is our pollinator protection plan that was presented to council in July of 2025. It is available on the Sustainable Orangeville Committee website if there are any questions. Sorry, I breezed through that very quickly, but I wanted to highlight the largest changes, which were the change from 6 inches to 8 inches for allowable grass height, and the 4 definitions that will be added to all 3 bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. We'll move first into public comments. Was there anybody on the line, Madam Clerk? No, we're good. So was there anybody in the gallery who wished to comment on this item? Sure, come on up.
Rick Ugolini, Cedar Drive, Orangeville. I'm against this growing things on the boulevard for many reasons. I have pictures that I took today of some of these boulevard plantings, and they're just insane. The sidewalks are blocked. Some of the seedlings or vegetation is 3 feet high. Little kids, you can't see little kids crossing the sidewalk. And it's supposed to be, 24 inches from the curb? Well, a lot of these plants are over the curb, over the sidewalks, and it looks ridiculous. It looks like an unkept yard, and that's exactly what it is. Why can't people grow things on their own front yard instead of the town's yard? Now, is there any height restriction to the pollinator garden?
8 inches.
Go ahead.
Thank you through your mayor post. So there is a right-of-way bylaw, and there are height restrictions for safety. I believe, I'm going to redirect to the manager. Tony.
Yeah, go ahead, CEO.
Yeah, if I can jump in, I think it would be more appropriate for the delegation to ask his questions. Catherine, maybe if you want to move away from the podium, and he can ask his questions, and we'll have that separation, if that's okay.
No problem.
In fact, you could take the seat right beside Tony. Thank you.
Did you have any other comments, Mr. Ugolini?
Well, any of the boulevard gardens that I've looked at, and I have pictures right here, if you want to look at them, are just, the only one that's half decent is the one here on 2nd Street. It's not too bad. But the one on Zina Street, it's over the sidewalk, it's over the curb, and the one on Diane Drive, oh, it's even worse. And why is this allowed? Like, if all these boulevard gardens are going to be like this, how are you going to see anything? Like, are they going to be put boulevard gardens on corners? Or sides where there's no parking or no sidewalk? You know, those are the questions I have. Okay. And why does someone have to plant stuff on the boulevard when they got a big front lawn?
Okay, thank you for your comments. Was there anybody else in the gallery who wished to ask a question? Yeah, come on up. Or make a comment.
Thank you, Mayor Post. Matthew Smith, 38 McCarthy Street. So just in regards to, let's say, what Mr. Ugolini was bringing up about planting on the front yard boulevard and front yard gardens, there's a case that just ended this year in Mississauga. It was quite a known case of a homeowner. His name is Wolf Ruck, R-U-C-K. So it was Ruck v. Mississauga. And it was basically, the case was about front yard gardens, and the city of Mississauga kept mowing down his garden because he claimed it was naturalized, and he was saying it was his freedom of expression. So it ended up going to it went to the Superior Court of Ontario, who determined that indeed the homeowner is allowed to naturalize his entire front yard under freedom of expression under the federal charter of that. So that's just one of the reasons why I believe this should be allowed, because there's already precedent been set at the higher court level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Was there anybody else in the gallery who wished to speak to this one? Oh, yep, come on up, Mr. Middleton. We just need your name and address for the record, and you'll have your 3 minutes as well.
Sure. Mark Middleton on Zina Street. I just want to reiterate the gentleman to before, just on Zina. I've got 2 young kids. They're in a wagon. We're going down Zina. They're going to go like this, like as we're going by all this. And I'm more worried about the tick potential of them getting a tick on them, right? So, I mean, I'm all for the beautification of, especially down Zina. It looks lovely when you walk down there in the summertime. It's just whether or not we can maybe separate it out a little bit away from the actual sidewalks, so that if you were, say, transporting young children, that they don't have the potential of like actually touching the garden itself. That's really my only concern. It's lovely when it's done correctly. Like you said, it sometimes looks a little disheveled if it's not. And maybe you guys can have some standardized plants that you can instruct neighbors to plant at that point, that kind of, keeps it nice. So anyways, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Middleton. Is there anybody else in the gallery? Okay, so we'll move into council comments. Deputy Mayor Taylor, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mayor Post. I guess I would agree with the gallery. I certainly read the definition of what a pollinator garden is. And by the way, the presentation was excellent and couldn't tell you were nervous. So thank you for your presentation. Candidly, I wish we wouldn't do this. It's not something that I would support. To me, it looks unsightly, and they're not managed in an efficient way. And the examples that were given, I know the people that have those, and I think it means a lot to them. It's important to them to be able to have their properties in that way. And I want people to be able to do as they wish on their own properties. But it's not my wish. I wish we wouldn't do this, would be my wish. I'll vote in favor because I've done the work on it, but I would hope that we would be very controlling about what people can and cannot do. It's not the vision that I would have for what our town would look like as I go through. So just wanted to share that. I'll support it, but reluctantly so.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Andrews?
Thank you, Your Worship. In alignment somewhat with Deputy Mayor Taylor, I'm encouraged by the pollinator idea. And again, I also want to thank staff for the report. It was very well done. I guess my comment is viewing how many of our neighborhoods are. There are people who care. There's emotion behind a pollinator garden. There's emotion behind a green grass. There are those that know how to maintain their green grass. There are those that know how to maintain a pollinator garden. There are those that don't know how to maintain their grass. And there are also those that don't know how to maintain a pollinator garden. So I think that we've got to find, not to say a solution. I think that the opportunity here is to have that discussion, for staff to, think about what the impact will be. The impact would be that, yes, we're looking at the opportunity for increasing the height of a pollinator garden and, the potential of invasive species. And that's where was highlighted in the gallery, even a list of potential vegetation that would be acceptable, because one of my concerns is that you have a collage, and I could go into a long diatribe, which we don't have time for. We would take this offline, on some things that have happened even on my property, which had nothing to do with my property, but things can happen with neighbors who don't understand what they plant eventually can cross over and pose some challenges. Having said that, I think what we need to look at is not only the impact of what that would look like at a boulevard or also on people's lawns if they don't know what they're doing. It can be the latest trend to, let's move down this route, but then if people just don't understand, don't have the education behind it, that's where we might get into some issues. And I think the only other part that I have of this is the ability of our bylaw department to manage this. And I understand the impact we already have with so much that our bylaw department is responsible for. This is just adding something else for them to watch out over. And again, we know that it is a complaint-based process, but adding another, let's add it to the list of things that you're responsible for, I just don't know if we have the capacity to effectively monitor. And again, I'm not saying that every single neighborhood in Orangeville is now going to go from green grass to pollinator gardens, but there are going to be those that decide, well, this is not a bad idea. I'm just going to let it happen. So more of a comment, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Prendergast.
Thank you, Mayor Post, through you. Thank you, Ms. Rogg, for the very great presentation. And you really did it justice describing what a pollinator garden is. So thank you very much. I have a couple of comments. I think the benefits of a pollinator garden are something that we need to consider, and they're not purely aesthetic, right? We're doing this not out of a trend, but to support ourselves, to support humanity, supporting biodiversity in the town of Orangeville, creating butterfly ways, attracting insects to pollinate our gardens. So it's not something that, the idea behind it, the impetus is coming from a very wholesome place. It's not about making Orangeville ugly. It's and maintained, as Councillor Andrews had said, well-maintained pollinator gardens look beautiful. Sometimes, during no mow May, my own garden can look a little bit hectic, but I know that bees are overwintering there. And I have different knowledge that maybe perhaps if it's shared and if the town communicates this, people might get on board and understand why these changes could be beneficial over just having monocultural grass. In Orangeville, flooding is an issue. by creating extensive root systems with native plants. It's been proven that they absorb more rain. Why wouldn't we want that? So there are just some alternatives. And I know it might look different than what we're used to. We don't need to be scared of things that are different. And done well, it could look great. And it's also, we wouldn't have a legal leg to stand on either if we refused it. But this way, we'll have parameters. We'll be able to say what the buffer zone is if the concern is your child touches something they might be allergic to. And then we have ownership over it, which is better if we can control those parameters, rather. Sustainable Orangeville has also talked about this and talked about ways we could support residents through pollinators in a bag. I know it's coming to the end of the term, but the town is definitely on board with helping residents who are new to pollinator gardens. One last comment. Recently, I became aware of the issue of fogging for mosquitoes, and I believe that this ties in with the Pollinator Protection Plan. Some municipalities, and maybe this could fall under our open air bylaw, they have some planning or legal considerations if you're going to fog for mosquitoes, which would include advance notification for neighbors that abut your property, for any adjacent neighbors, and sensitive receptors like we have for the fire. So people could register their property as a sensitive receptor to those pesticides and say no to mosquito fogging. It's something that I would like to see researched, if staff could take that back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prendergast. Was there any other comments from members of council? Not seeing any. Could I get a motion then to receive the report for information? Councillor McIntosh and Councillor Stevens, any last questions or comments? All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, thank you very much for being here. That was great. The next matter on the agenda is regarding the sign bylaw review. I will now call upon James Bramley, Supervisor of Licensing and Bylaw Enforcement, to provide the overview of the sign bylaw review.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, staff, and residents who are in attendance tonight. The purpose of today's presentation is to provide an overview of the proposed sign bylaw and highlight key changes from the current sign bylaw that staff are recommending for council's consideration. The proposed bylaw is intended to modernize the town's regulation, improve usability for residents, business owners, and strengthen enforcement provisions, and ensure that the bylaw remains consistent with the current legislation and legal principles. Rather than reviewing every section of the bylaw, today's presentation will focus on the significant changes and amendments to the proposed bylaw. Next slide, please. The current sign bylaw has been in place for more than 12 years and has undergone numerous amendments during that time. Those amendments addressed changed business needs, new forms of signage, electronic message displays, administrative processes, and enforcement requirements. While the current bylaw continues to serve its intended purpose, staff identified opportunities to improve its organization, readability, and usability. Rather than continuing to make incremental amendments, staff undertook a comprehensive review of the entire bylaw. The proposed bylaw consolidates previous amendments, modernizes several provisions, improves consistency with current legislation, and provides a clear framework for businesses and property owners and staff. Next slide, please. The purpose of this review was to modernize the town sign bylaw while maintaining a balance between business promotion, public safety, community appearance, and heritage preservation. Through the review process, staff examined the existing bylaw and identified opportunities to improve its organization, clarity, and administration. In addition, staff consulted with Heritage Orangeville and the Orangeville Business Improvement Area to better understand concerns and opportunities relating to signage within the Heritage area and the BIA. The result is a proposed bylaw that consolidates existing regulations, improves usability, and incorporates feedback received through stakeholders in the review process. Next slide, please. Before discussing the proposed amendments, it is important to understand the legal framework that governs municipal sign regulations. Signs have been recognized by the Canadian courts as a form of expression protected under Section 2B of the Canadian Charter's Rights and Freedoms. This means municipalities cannot prohibit signs simply because they disagree with a particular opinion, message, or viewpoint. However, Municipalities do have the authority under the Municipal Act to regulate signs for legitimate municipal purposes. These include public safety, traffic safety, heritage conservation, community aesthetics, and ensuring signage is compatible with the surrounding development. As a result, sign bylaws are generally designed to regulate objective factors such as where signs may be located, how large they may be, whether they are illuminated, and how they may impact public safety or the community character. The proposed sign bylaw has been drafted with these principles in mind. The goal is not to regulate the content of lawful expression, but rather establish clear and reasonable rules governing the placement and clear and reasonable rules governing the placement and designs of signs throughout the municipality. This legal framework has influenced many of the amendments proposed within the bylaw, particularly those related to sign permissions, exemptions, and heritage standards and enforcement provisions. Next slide, please. One of the most significant changes in the proposed sign bylaw is the overall organization. The current sign bylaw is structured primarily by zoning category. To determine whether a sign is permitted and what regulations apply, an applicant often needs to review multiple sections throughout the bylaw. For example, a business owner may need to review general provisions, zone-specific provisions, sign-specific provisions, and heritage provisions before determining whether a sign is even permitted or not. The proposed bylaw recognizes that regulations by sign type rather than by zone. For example, by ground sign, by wall sign, projecting sign, and etc. They each have their own dedicated section containing all applicable regulations. This change does not substantially alter many of the existing regulations. It instead consolidates them into a more logical and user-friendly format. A new summary schedule has also been added, which identifies each sign type, whether a permit is required, and the zones where the sign is permitted. This provides a quick reference tool for residents, businesses, applicants, as well as staff. The intent of this change is to reduce confusion, improve consistency and interpretation, and make the bylaw easier for public and staff to use. Next slide, please. The proposed bylaw introduces clear, legal, non-conforming sign provisions. Under the current bylaw, there is limited guidance regarding signs that were legally installed but may not comply to future bylaw amendments. This can create uncertainty for property owners and businesses. The proposed bylaw clarifies that signs that were lawfully erected prior to the implementation of a new bylaw may continue to remain, even if they do not fully comply to the updated regulations. However, those signs must continue to be maintained in a safe condition, cannot be expanded, relocated, structurally altered, or replaced with another non-compliant sign. This approach is commonly used throughout municipal planning and regulatory frameworks and provides fairness to existing businesses while allowing the town to gradually transition towards updating standards over time. Importantly, this amendment does not require existing businesses to immediately replace or remove lawful signs simply because the bylaw has changed. Next slide, please. The proposed bylaw includes several administrative and enforcement updates intended to reflect current municipal practices and legislative authority. One of the changes is the formal separation of responsibility of sign administration. Permanent signs will continue to be administered through the building division, while temporary signs will be administered through the clerk's division and bylaw. This reflects current operational structure and allows applications to proceed more efficiently. The purpose for this is anything that is permanent is a structure that's being added to a building or something that a building permit would already need to be obtained, and this is to reduce redundancies and secondary reviews. The bylaw has also modernized service methods. In addition to registered mail, notices may be served by regular mail, email, personal service, courier service, or by posting on property where appropriate. This provides greater flexibility, improves communications with the property owners for the times that we run into postal strikes, which we've experienced several times over the last few years. From an enforcement perspective, the bylaw introduces explicit inspection authority under the Municipal Act, providing clarity regarding the town's ability to inspect properties for compliance. The proposed bylaw also aligns with the town's administrative penalty system. Certain contraventions may be designated for administrative penalties, allowing for more efficient enforcement where appropriate. And importantly, the bylaw includes a provision confirming that a person cannot be subject to both administrative penalty and prosecution under the Provincial Offences Act for the same offense. This ensures fairness and consistency within the enforcement process. Overall, these changes do not create significant changes to the new bylaw, but modernize it with the administration enforcement framework supporting the bylaw. Next slide, please. The key objective to the review was to eliminate duplications between municipal bylaws and provide greater flexibility for community events. The proposed sign bylaw now explicitly exempts election signs that are regulated under the new election sign bylaw, rather than regulating election signs through multiple bylaws. All election signs requirements are consolidated within a single bylaw, making rules easier to understand for candidates, third-party advertisers, and enforcement staff. The proposed bylaw also introduces provisions permitting banners and flag signs associated with approved special events occurring within areas subject to approved road closures. These signs will still comply with safety requirements and be removed once events conclude. Next slide, please. The Heritage Sign Special Policy District remains an important component with the proposed sign bylaw. The current bylaw contains heritage regulations throughout several sections, making them more difficult for applicants to locate and understand. The proposed bylaw consolidates these requirements and provides a dedicated Heritage Sign Special Policy District section that clearly identifies the applicable standards. The bylaw continues to maintain heritage appearance requirements, including standards relating to sign material, placement, illumination, projecting signs, and awnings. The review process involving Heritage Orangeville and Orangeville BIA has been also retained. Their comments remain advisory in nature, with the final approval resting with the chief building official. The intent of these changes is not to significantly alter the heritage standards, but rather improve clarity, consistency, and ease of administration. Next slide, please. Several amendments have been made to modernize the sign bylaw and reflect how signs are designed today. One example is the removal of the existing restrictions requiring portable temporary signs to be generally black and white in color. When originally adopted, this provision was intended to maintain consistency among portable signs. However, modern signs, manufacturing, and digital printing technologies have made color graphics and a standard business practice. The proposed sign bylaw removes this restriction while maintaining other regulations relating to sign location and safety. The proposed sign bylaw introduces several updates to definitions and measurement standards. Sign height calculations have been clarified, additional sign types have been defined, and several existing definitions have been modernized to improve consistency and reduce interpretation issues. These changes are intended to modernize the bylaw while maintaining appropriate controls over sign placement, appearance, and public safety. Next slide, please. The proposed bylaw includes several updates to the prohibited signs section. The current bylaw contains restrictions related to violence, nudity, sexual explicit content. While the proposed bylaw expands these provisions by prohibiting signs containing profane language and signs containing content that is contrary to the Criminal Code of Canada and the Canadian Human Rights Act or other applicable laws. These provisions are intended to address situations where signage may contain context that extends beyond protected expression. The bylaw also clarifies restrictions related to signs located on public property, utility infrastructure, helping reduce confusion regarding where signs may be legally placed. Perhaps most significantly, the proposed bylaw has an expressly permitted framework. Under this approach, any sign that is not specifically permitted by the bylaw is considered prohibited. This change improves certainty for applicants, property owners, and enforcement staff by clearly establishing what sign types are permitted and where they may be located rather than relying on interpretation. The bylaw provides a comprehensive list of permitted signs, sign types, and associated regulations. Next slide, please. As a part of the review, several definitions were added or updated to improve clarity and support consistent administration and enforcement of the bylaw. A new definition for art installation has been added to distinguish public art, sculptures, monuments, and other artistic displays of signs. This helps ensure that public art and similar installations are not unintentionally regulated as advertising signage. The definition of occupant has also been expanded to clearly identify individuals who have responsibility for the sign, including tenants, lessees, persons having care over the control of the property. This assists with enforcement and compliance. A new definition for person has also been added to clarify that the bylaw applies to individuals, corporations, partnerships, and other legal entities. This is a common modernization found in many municipal bylaws. Several existing definitions have also been updated. The definition for height now clearly establishes how a sign height is to be measured and prevents artificial grading or landscaping features to be used to increase apparent height of a sign. The definition of mural has been clarified to distinguish artistic displays from advertising signage. Finally, the definition of sign has been modernized to expand to better capture contemporary sign types and advertising devices while maintaining exemptions for murals and art installations. Next slide, please. In closing, the proposed sign bylaw represents a comprehensive modernization of the town's existing sign regulations. The bylaw consolidates more than a decade of amendments into a single document, improves organization and usability, and provides clear direction for residents, businesses, applicants, and staff. Throughout the review process, staff considered stakeholder feedback, current operational practices, legislative requirements, charter considerations, relevant case law, and best practices from other municipalities. The proposed bylaw maintains the town's ability to protect public safety, preserve the character of the Heritage Sign Special Policy District, and regulate signage in a fair, consistent manner while also supporting economic activity, community events, and modern sign technologies. Staff believe that the proposed sign bylaw provides a balance and a practical framework that will serve the town well into the future. And there is one addition I want to add before ending this presentation that I forgot to add as a consideration, as this is a topic that's been brought up several times over the last few years, is acknowledgement of the variance process. I want to state that we looked back to 2022 to today's date, and as of that time, there's been only 8 minor variances that have been applied. Several have been denied and several have been approved. These variances are minor in nature. Several of them were coming in the same package. So on average, we're getting about 2 a year. So that's why we didn't make any significant changes to the bylaw, as these variances are quite minor and the frequency that they're being asked are also minor in nature. That concludes my presentation. Are there any comments or questions for me?
Okay, first of all, was there anybody on the line that wished to ask a question? Madam Clerk, no. Was there anybody in the gallery who wished to comment on this item? And seeing none, we'll move to members of council. We'll start with Councillor McIntosh, then Councillor Sherwood, then Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you for the presentation. Very informative. Your last part was what I was going to ask you about. I think we all were. In regards to council's ultimate decision, you can't appeal it. There's some on this council that want this black and white. I don't think it can be done black and white. I like the way you've got it, but I know some members of council will disagree with me. What's your opinion on that? What's the reason for the variance and not just black and white, that this is the way it is?
Go ahead, Mr. Bramley.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Post. Again, we want to ensure consistency, and when we reference legal framework that this is a charter issue, that we have to have some sort of appeal mechanism to appropriately approach this. In addition, there are considerations such as the Heritage District, such as other considerations that we have to match the town's look and feel. This is why we do have a variance process on this. There is discussion about delegating to town staff, but again, it's a larger consideration that we will take back and provide a larger answer on that as well.
Thank you. And just for the record, I think that's great. I think council should have, the ultimate say in it if it's a variance, but thank you for your answer.
Councillor Sherwood?
Thank you, Your Worship, to you, Mr. Bramley. One of the things I find absent in this bylaw is blade signs. I think they need to be included in this. Specifically under the Heritage District, we have some pretty strict rules as far as the types of blade signs that are allowed. So it just seems that there's nothing mentioned unless I've missed it. So I'm wondering under H, under the Heritage Sign Special, if you can include all those provisions that Heritage Orangeville has made regarding blade signs. My other concern as well, and this is something you may want to consider bringing back to Heritage Orangeville for their input, is murals. They are starting to become a bit of a problem. They might look lovely, but if they start putting them on a heritage building and affecting the brick, the mortar, the characteristic of the historical building, we have a problem there. So again, I don't see anything in this bylaw that talks about murals. And I know I'm talking right now about the Heritage District. That's something you want to think, town-wide. But if you could please include those more specifically, blade signs and murals.
Go ahead, Mr. Bramley.
Thank you, Councillor Sherwood. Through you, Mayor Post. In relation to murals and the Heritage District, we need to focus on that this bylaw is a sign bylaw. And we define what signs are in relation to advertising for businesses, information, and such. When I exclude art installations and murals from this bylaw, it's because they don't fall under the definition of a sign. We don't want to start permitting different categorized items under this bylaw when they're already referenced under something else. So for a mural, for example, it would require a heritage permit if there's any alteration to a heritage building within that area that requires a heritage permit. If that's not obtained, we also have provisions on the property standards bylaw that can also address this issue. So that concern is already covered under our current bylaws to address.
Councillor Sherwood, go ahead.
And sorry, just to clarify, where are what bylaw is those murals, the criteria of the murals found? If it's not in the sign bylaw.
So it's through the Heritage Act as well as the property standards bylaw.
The property standards bylaw? Okay. I might reach out to you tomorrow to find out specifically where that is. Thank you.
Councillor Stevens? And
Thank
then
you,
Deputy
through
Mayor.
you, Worship. So we drive around Orangeville, many different heights, widths, illumination. Is there going to be grandfathering in, or are we just going to go by the rules? And if you could explain that, and if you don't understand what I mean. So,
Mr. Bramley?
Thank you, Councillor, through you, Mayor Post. If I understand correctly, you're asking any existing signage that is in place today, are we just expecting them to transition into our current model, or are we going to grandfather them in?
Yeah. Yes, correct.
So that was a section that we did address, that there is a specific new addition to a grandfathering clause or a legal non-conforming clause that's been added to this bylaw where the current bylaw doesn't have clear verbiage on what that looks like. The new bylaw that's being proposed today has clear verbiage stating that any signage that has been installed today, yesterday, a year ago, 10 years ago, that is done so in a legal manner that is compliant with the bylaw at that time would be considered compliant today. The only difference is they aren't able to alter, add to it, and grow into that non-compliant of the current bylaw. So it is designed that we can slowly, gradually go into what compliance would be as long as it was installed compliant at the time of installation.
If I can. So business has a sign, it's been up there for 20 years, 10 years. Any alterations, they'll have to conform to the new.
Correct. And when we talk about alterations, when you look at the definition of alteration, that means a structural change to the bracketing and the foundation of the wall. That's not replacing the banner or the sign of what the business is. So for them to make that alteration, that means they're taking that mount, that bracket, that addition to the building and replacing it. So that would fall under the building code as well when we look at any buildings that were built at a later or earlier date that the building code was compliant at that time to now, if they're replacing it or repairing it, it has to fall to current standard. And that's why we reflected it in that manner.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. First off, I'd like to share that I will be filing a grievance with the Deputy Mayor's Union. I was hand up first and was ignored online here tonight by the mayor. So want to let everybody know that. Can you still hear me?
We can hear you. We're just choosing to ignore you. Ask your question.
May I ask a couple of questions, Your Worship?
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor. We can't hear you.
Okay, I'm going to ask a couple of questions. First of all, Mr. Bramley, I know I'm your personal time monger on the bylaw desk, but my question would be is when you mentioned about the no profane language, does that pertain to private property as well?
Mr. Bramley?
Through you, Mayor Post, that's correct. That's all signage within the property. And again, when we're looking at this, we're looking at and being very cautious that it does not violate charter and other the pieces of legislation. So that's the consideration when we go this route. It was put in as a broader scope, but we want to ensure that we're still not violating people's freedom of expression is the primary concern of that matter. So you're asking, is it?
So that's confusing though, right?
Yep.
So let's be, if I could ask specifically, so there was a trend to use profanity in regards to our prime minister, and that was on persons' lawns, and children were walking past it, and complaints were made. Under the new bylaw, can we remove that sign?
Mr. Bramley?
As it currently stands right now, that is the interpretation. I do want to take this back to verify, as there were a few other last minute pieces that have come up. Just with profane, again, freedom of expression, it is a sensitive topic, so I will come back with that on the report.
Okay. It's a sensitive topic, but you know, I would firmly be in the camp of get that off that person's property and not allow them to have that. And I'm hoping that we could address that in that way. You know, if I got to go first and I was behind Councillor McIntosh with respect to him, I am the guy that would say this should be black and white. I truly don't understand why we have a bylaw that is specific to an action, which is signs can go here or must be this size or whatnot, that they come back to council. And there's lines in what was given to us tonight in your presentation. And essentially it could be construed as my opinion. You know, I don't want Bramley to have a sign up that says, you know, go Detroit Tigers because I love the Blue Jays. So therefore I'm going to vote against it. I just don't think we should be doing that. It would be great if we did have something consistent, something that was black and white and took the onus off of bylaw, candidly, by having to bring it to council, and council for having to make a decision when we clearly already have a bylaw. You know, it's like, to me, it's like the grasses. We just change it from 6 to 8 for the pollinator. Well, I would expect now that it's black and white, that if it's 8.5 inches, that someone's going to be fined or have to pay because they're not cutting their grass. And this thing has always been a source of consternation for me. I don't want to tell a business that they can't have a sign. And I can think of numerous examples. There was a real estate agent that came to us wanting to sell townhouses on Broadway, and they wanted a larger sign, and it came to council. Well, it's just not a great thing. Like, to me, the bylaw says what the size of the sign should be. We shouldn't be in a spot where we're changing things. So I guess, you know, my line here is I'd like to be consistent. I'd like council relatively removed at an arm's length from decisions that are made regarding the sign bylaw. And I'd like it to speak to itself. So in other words, if Joe Blow's business came and wanted to put up a new sign, that the administration would simply say, well, here's the bylaw, what you're suggesting unfortunately doesn't fit. Or celebrate that, oh, it's perfect, and we can't wait for you to put up your sign. So anyway, I'm hopeful that we can address those two things, and that's the profanity and then consistency in a black and white way of approach.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Andrews.
Yes, thank you. It's always nice to follow my fellow council members here and an opportunity to kind of comment on their comments as well. And Deputy Mayor Taylor, certainly in alignment with what you've just said there. What I'm going to make a comment, and first of all, Mr. Bramley, very well done. This report, a lot of information, a lot of time that has been spent to consolidate everything. I think what's important is that we don't get into the wild, wild west where anyone can just do for a free-for-all. And I feel it's important that you have some form of structure that is, in fact, you know, very clear. And I think that we're almost there with this. One thing that did come up, and again, Councillor Sherwood, blade signs, that was one thing that, you know, stuck out. One thing that also stuck out is murals. And what's interesting, you referenced the artistic nature of murals, but what is also interesting is how some businesses can kind of segue that into a indirect message to the community. And I take a look at other larger communities where they've allowed some of that to integrate, be that creatively without necessarily people knowing about it, but even with QR codes that are implemented as part of the design. One thing, and again, I'm probably getting into the weeds in this just for a moment, but I look at the idea of temporary signs, and if a business wanted to wrap, because you can do that now quickly with a vinyl wrap, that would fall under the umbrella if it is within the context of the definition, it would be allowed, okay? And then the readograph signs. I was trying to formulate the calculation here on the size of those readograph signs, because you can go small, you can go big, you can go gigantic, and it's depending on how much window space you have. The calculation that you have here, if you don't mind just providing me with, not to tell you, we'll take this offline. We'll take it offline. There's no need to be spending some time during council meeting here, or at least in a public meeting on this. But I was just trying to figure out exactly how big can be defined as being big. That's all I have. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Andrews. Was there any additional comments or questions? Okay, with that then, thank you very much, Mr. Branley. Appreciate that. We did not get any written comments on this one, so if there's no other questions or comments, we just need a motion to receive. If I could, please. Councillor Sherwood and Councillor McIntosh, all in favor? And that is carried. And we will move then into the confirming bylaw. We have a recommendation that the confirming bylaw listed below be read 3 times and finally passed. Councillor Prendergast and Councillor Andrews, all in favor? And that is carried. And a motion to adjourn, Councillor McIntosh and Deputy Mayor, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening.